I'm Karen Kesteloot from PortPrep, and I get you into the best arts colleges. And I'm here with Joe Lam of LA Filmmaker, who just wrote Teenage Dreams, How to Make a Successful Teen Comedy Movie. And Joe's been involved in the filmmaking industry in LA for several years now, and I'm here also with Riley Fittis. He's my co-op student who's an aspiring filmmaker. And so we want to talk to you, Joe, to find out about how you've been positioning yourself to have a successful career in filmmaking in the mecca of LA for filmmakers. So let's go to you, Joe, and you can tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've been doing in film the last several years. Tell the students about a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go into a question period with you.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Karen and Riley, for doing this interview. I really appreciate it. This is the first one for my book. And a little background about myself. I actually started on the path as a filmmaker at the age of 16. And it was because I had a teacher that showed me a movie. It was called Citizen Kane. I'm sure that most people know of that movie. And interesting fact is that that film has actually launched more careers after viewing than any other film, because filmmakers credit that movie as the reason why they became filmmakers. So from there, I was just making a lot of projects when I was in high school, and then I went on eventually to intern at Paramount Pictures, and that was a great experience. And after that, I decided I wanted to get an education to learn as much as possible and make all the mistakes and go through the entire process, because there were two paths I could have taken, which is one, stay at Paramount but work from the bottom all the way up. And if I did that, I would not have had the access to all the tools and resources that the art college that I went to provided, which was all the camera equipment, all of the training, all of the crew, and the resources that go involved with that type of education. So from there, I went to the Academy of Art University, and it's in San Francisco, and enrolled in the motion pictures department, and it was the best experience I have ever had in terms of immersion in the field that I was going for in terms of my dreams. I met so many people that were like-minded, that shared the enthusiasm and passion for filmmaking, and we just learned together.
So if you're a student and you're interested in going into filmmaking, I think you're going to find it interesting to listen to this interview with Joe Lam to find out how did he become successful as a young filmmaker in LA. So you were telling us, Joe, that you started at Paramount, just working, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about your first job. But what I'm interested too in hearing, because of course I get students into the best arts colleges, whether it's for architecture, animation, fashion design, or filmmaking, with a good portfolio. So it'd be interesting to hear about why was it that you chose to go to school, and why you chose the college that you did, and then what did you have to do to get in?
Well, when I was at Paramount, it was the feeling of being a small cog in a big wheel. And it was such a giant machine, and I wasn't doing anything creative there. So that's great if you're below the line, what they call crew positions. But if you want to be above the line, which is producer, director, screenwriter, cinematographer, then that's not quite the place to be. So that's why I chose to get my degree in motion pictures at the Academy of Art University. And it's, like I said, one of the best experiences I've ever had, and I, would not trade it for the world. One of the best things about it as well was that when I was there, they had an award ceremony. So at the end of your last year, if you made a film that was high quality, you would get an award for it. And 2 years into it, I saw people going up and getting awards, and I said, you know what? That's what I want. And I dedicated myself for the next 2 years to make the best films possible. And I walked away with 2 awards for my film, and they actually had to create a completely new award for it called the Special Jury Prize, because they said it excelled in all the categories of producing, directing, cinematography, writing, that they had to create a separate award for it. So I was blown away. And then after that, what happened was I went right into the industry. I just started making phone calls and landed a job as an office PA at a behind-the-scenes DVD production company. It was called Herzog Productions, right in LA. And we made movies like all the special features that you see on the DVDs, such as for Transformers. It was Born Identity series, even going back to do anniversaries like the Aladdin movies for Disney. So some big budget projects, and worked my way up to become a office manager, because being in the industry is one thing as an employee, as a worker, but I wanted to one day have my own business, my own film production company. So that's why I wanted to know the administrative side of it. So after I got that information, I had left, and at the same time I had not finished my first feature screenplay, and that was something I needed to get out from me. And I'd learned how to do it from film school, but I had not quite achieved that yet. So I took a year off. I wrote, came out with my first screenplay, and I went back into entertainment. So I landed a job at Skyline TV Commercials as a commercial producer. And from then on, I decided, you know what, if they can do it, I can do it. So I started my own film production company, and that was back in 2006.
Yeah, I've been hearing from filmmakers that they have different strategies on how to be successful. And one, you hear, oh, you have to work through the levels and you start as a PA. But I just recently met a director, and he was saying he did not do that, and that because he wanted to be a director, he just got his foot in the door with high-level people by meeting the right people and being on sets and kind of selling himself and promoting himself, so that he got in at a higher level. So it's interesting that you were saying that too, because it sounds like you're a creative person and you want to be more involved in the decisions, not a technician per se.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So that's why I had to put my foot down at one point, and I said, I'm not going to accept any position except above the line. So even if it was, the smallest project, I would still be considered director, producer, cinematographer. And that's something that when you make those kind of decisions, that's going to impact your career and the rest of your life, to be honest. Because I do know people who wanted to be producers, film producers. They became PAs, they started at the bottom, like you said, and what happened was they stayed there, and they stayed for 6 years, and because it was such long hours, 12, 14, 16-hour days on set, they didn't have time for anything else, and their passion just kind of went away. And that's why I think what you do, Karen, with your coaching is a great thing, because you get students into a place where it frees them up, and they are put into those higher level positions rather than going on to the industry and just starting at the bottom.
So Joe, you're saying that school gives you the higher level thinking then to be able to take on the cinematography or directing or producing? Is that your experience?
It definitely does, because if you're thrown into a course that says cinematography, you're going to be given cameras that are, $10, $20, $30,000 worth of equipment. I mean, plus an entire set of lighting to have at your disposal, plus the training from the teachers who, in my college, they were also working professionals, which helped as well. So they had their foot in the door and their foot, teaching as well. So yeah, it's that to me was one of the best things ever. So.
How did you choose a college?
Well, for me, it was different than what you do, which is where you coach students. I was kind of searching and figuring out what to do, and I happened to see an ad on TV for this college, and it struck a chord with me, and that's what I went with, to be honest.
Because one of the things that I help counsel students and their families on is what is the best college for a given career. Reputation matters, of course, who the faculty are, if they are working in the field. I think that's really important, and it sounds like that's been your experience. Their credentials, so you're really going to get a good leading edge education, that you've got the latest technology as well as the high-level thinking, not just the technical thinking, that, and you've got that reputation behind you with the school that you went to, that you're gonna. It sort of helps you to get your foot in the door to start working. If they say, "Oh, you went to whatever college," we know those grads are good. Did you hear that when you first started working? Like, how much credence was put on where you studied, or do you find it's more what you do with your studies?
Well, in terms of that aspect really didn't matter, and I'm being completely honest. Okay, but what did matter was the quality of work in my portfolio after I had left my art school. So, because if you need to be a doctor, you have to have certification, right? But if you want to be a director, it's not the paperwork that matters; it's the artistry. So that was key. Now, if you're starting at the bottom somewhere, you don't have that. You don't have a demo reel. You don't have a portfolio. So what do? You still have to do it anyways, but you have to do it on your own. Might as well go to an institution where you can get all the guidance you need. You learn everything you can of what the industry has, and then apply it, and then you come out with something that you can showcase. And actually, something I wanted to add in terms of deciding a college as well was the first college I went to was an architecture school. Now, if I had a coach in the beginning and say, "Joe, what do you really want to do in life?" My first choice was filmmaking. My second was architecture. I didn't have a coach. I went to architecture school. Cost my parents $50,000 for that 1 year. Now, if I had a coach like what you do, Karen, that would have saved $50,000.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I hear from a lot of the parents. They want to decide, what should we invest in? What does my son or daughter really want to do? What do they have the attributes for? And we're working right now on an ebook that helps people sort of sort through what are the different fields in the creative careers, and what are they like, and what jobs are there, to help kind of figure out where is the best place to go, because of course education is really expensive. And so one of the things we do is to help streamline that process, that people are putting their money in the right place and into the right school and the right career, so we're being a little bit more efficient with our education investment. So that's an interesting story. And I'm curious about, did you have to apply with a portfolio to film school, or you were more focused on just picking a school that you could get directly into and then coming out with a portfolio to use professionally?
My college did not require it.
Okay.
So that didn't really apply to me. There were a few others, such as USC, UCLA. They did not accept me. perhaps because they did require portfolios, you know, so because they're far more selective than the college that I went to. So, but if I had a coach, maybe it would have been a different story.
Yeah, I'm finding it is very challenging to get into those big name schools. Sometimes like 30 to 1 odds. It's as tough to get into any of the really good name arts colleges as it is to get into Harvard. 30 to 1 odds. Like to get into Harvard, everybody's got a 4.0 average, which may not be the case for art and design students. But it's a similar kind of odds of thousands of applicants for only maybe 100 to 200 spots, sometimes even only 50 students for particular programs. So at Harvard, there's 30,000 people that apply in a year for 1,000 spots. So it's that challenging to get in, and it's the same kind of deal if you want to go to any of the really good arts colleges. So, and that's why they have to have a portfolio as one of the deciding ways, right? So it's interesting though that you did not get into one of those big name schools, but you chose a school that you were really happy with. Can you tell us just a little bit more about your school experience?
I mean, yes, I was happy with it, but again, I was very limited in my choices because I didn't have quite the guidance and the portfolio preparation to get into, the bigger name ones, the USC, UCLA, all that, But my experience there was one where I had access to anything and everything I wanted in terms of equipment. So that was such a bonus. And just getting to handle the same equipment that actual filmmakers in the industry get to handle, it just gives you a complete understanding of what it takes to be a director or be a producer and to work with other filmmakers, other students at the same time. Because it's all the same, whether you're working at that level or on big budget projects, you still have the same chain of command, you still have the same number of crew people according to the size. You can't have a project without a director, you can't have it without a writer, you can't have it without a producer. So you learn how to also communicate with everybody and how to make the projects work. So you're dealing with budgets, you're dealing with calling for locations, auditioning actors, and all these sorts of things. So.
Yeah, why don't we flip to asking some questions between the two of you? So I think this is a really exciting opportunity. Instead of, teacher or coach to successful person out in the field, to be able to go from student to young professional. I think that the other students thinking about having a career in filmmaking would find this quite interesting because you're a little bit more inside it than I am, right? So, all right. So, Riley, how about you ask Joe a couple of those questions you brought up?
So my question was, you've done a lot of things like cinematographer, writer, director. Did you go into school knowing what you wanted to do, or did you kind of get a feel for it throughout?
Yeah, when I went into film school, all I knew was that I wanted to make movies. That's it. I didn't know what capacity. I didn't fully understand it. I just said, okay, that's what I want. So I need to go in and I'll explore it. So I kept an open mind in that way, and I just went into as many courses as possible. In terms of all the like sound design, even cinematography, producing, writing. But I knew that I didn't want to be the below the line positions. That's all I knew. So what I tell students is go in, explore, try anything and everything. Don't be too big, don't have such a huge ego that you say, I'm not going to do that, I only do this. Because what happens is, if you're a director and you switch and you work on a project where you're a producer or a writer, then when you go back to directing another project, you actually are able to understand and better communicate with people in those other positions because you have done it yourself as well.
I've also seen that you've been working on a film recently that ties into your book that you've just recently written. I saw that you did a lot of research into that. Do you always do that when you're going into a film project, like a documentary or stuff? Do you always do as much research as you can before you start shooting, or do you kind of develop it with the actors and the rest of the crew throughout?
It depends on the project, to be honest. You know, if you are a writer, it's absolutely crucial that you do as much research as possible to get to where you need to be to write it in a way that will affect an audience in a powerful way. Now, if you're a director, that's different because the writer has done all that work in terms of researching. So the director is reading what the writer has done and all the research behind it and has to translate that into a visual form. And the producer, of course, is there to really be the driving force to make it all happen, all the logistics that go involved to bringing everyone together. So it depends on which position you're talking about.
And then another interesting question brought up from your book is when you were talking about the different movies that you researched, you talk about kind of their successfulness as how much money they made in the box office, that kind of thing. Do you believe that all projects are successful based on money, or can there be like film just for art's sake?
Well, the reason why I titled the book Teenage Dreams: How to Make a Successful Teen Comedy Movie is because in Hollywood terms, success equals box office. My own personal belief in that is not the same, because success to me is doing what you want, it's what you love to do. Now, whether it's, you know, even as a filmmaker doing short films, you're still a filmmaker, you know. So it's you're still telling a story. It still boils down to being at a campfire and just sharing stories with people. That's really what it is. So the money is just something that helps remind filmmakers at the same time that to continue your art, to succeed in terms of the box office, that's something that is going to help immensely. You don't have to, you know, point for that all the time. And some of my favorite movies were not successful at all in terms of box office. So
I'm curious, what kind of success have you had in your career, and how has this question of box office versus art shown up in your early career?
well, for me, when I started my business in 2006, it was kind of on a fluke. And what happened was I really wanted it to be a film production company. So I started off doing promotional videos, like documentaries to help charities, things like that, because I didn't quite have a screenplay that was ready. So in terms of success, honestly, I don't have a feature film yet. I'm working towards it right now. So after writing my fourth screenplay, which was a teen comedy, I have now connected with a producer who has worked with Tyler Perry. I don't know if you guys know, but he does the Medea series and a lot of the African American comedies. And I've hired a line producer who has done a budget for that script. And that producer has actually served kind of like a coach as well, because I didn't know what to do once I had a screenplay that I said, okay, it's finally ready to be filmed. What do I do now? So he's been guiding me along. And so I've hired another line producer, and he's come up with a budget for the project after reading the script at about $2.9 million. And right now we are currently looking for film investors, and I've approached about 3 of them. And again, without that coach from that producer, I mean, I wouldn't know where to start.
So you find that throughout your career there's times where you need some kind of mentoring, whether it's you know, at the beginning of somebody's career they might come to somebody like me to get them into the right college, and then when you're at school it's your profs, and now that you're out practicing you're finding other colleagues with more experience to team up with, so that you can continue to learn how to move through the ranks and build a successful career.
Absolutely, because before I had the coaching from the producer, I would meet a wealthy individual and say, "Hi, I'm working on this project and I'm trying to get it funded." And they would look at me and be like, "Okay, you're obviously not prepared," because they would ask, "Do you have a business plan?" I said, "Well, no." So the coaches are absolutely essential. Teachers are absolutely essential because now, I'm going to have a business plan which will be completed in about a week, and I'm going to submit to those three wealthy individuals. So they're absolutely essential.
How do you convince investors to back your idea that your story is worth investing in and producing this film? It's great that you've learned how to get in front of them. That's the first challenge, to learn how to do that, and to have something that's crafted to a level where it's ready for that, and you have your business plan. What have you been learning through your mentors on how to pitch an idea to investors such that they're going to say, yes, this is definitely worth producing, this is a fantastic project?
Okay. Yeah, well, one of the things was when I got in touch with that producer, he just gave me the steps to follow. That's essentially it. Without those steps, without that mentoring, I would still be just, talking to these investors saying, "Oh, I have a project," but have nothing substantial. So it's less about me convincing them, but having the mentorship and also partnering with people who know exactly what to do, like the other line producer that I hired, who is creating the budget, and the budget and the business plan, which are the two things that really convince the film investor.
Yeah, I'm just curious that, it's an interesting thing. Filmmaking is part knowing how to craft a great film from so many different levels of thought and jobs that end up creating a film. It's such a broad and complicated type of art because so many people have to be involved in its creation, and business is such a big part of it, maybe even more so than a lot of the other arts. And so it's interesting that it sounds like you've been led down this path was, oh, I have to start learning about business and how to sell and position myself and how to brand myself. So, and you've been talking a lot about different types of coaches, like specialized coaches. So maybe you could comment a bit on the different kinds of coaches and mentors that you've found to be able to continue a career in filmmaking that you're going to feel really satisfied with. What have you had to do, and who have you sought out to help you?
Well, one individual who, his name is Raymond Aaron, and he is a terrific coach. I went to a few of his seminars, and he said to separate yourself from the crowd. Let's say you're going to go find a dentist, and there's 10 dentists, right? And one of them has written a book. And his question was, which one are you more likely to go talk to, to work on your teeth? And most people are going to say the one who wrote the book. So, and that's why I decided to write the book. So if I'm going to film investors, I've already separated myself from the crowd, aside from doing the trailers and the scenes for my projects, because it's something where they look at it and they value it, because there's a lot of thought that goes into the creation of a book, and very few people do that. And it helps you stand out and become an authority in that subject as well.
So in your experience within filmmaking, there's people who are writing scripts and screenplays, but there aren't so many filmmakers that have written a book. Is that accurate?
Yes, correct. Correct.
So this makes you stand out, and maybe, I guess what you're hoping is that the investors are going to give you a little bit more credence, that maybe they should hear you out.
And they already have, because when I tell them about the book, they are extremely impressed.
Oh, great.
And it's something that they're going to hang on to more than a business card. It's something tangible that they can hold and they can share with, even if they're not interested in investing, they can pass that book along to someone else who is interested. and it has all the resources like the links to all of my trailers and scenes that are attached to my teen comedy screenplays.
So do you specialize in teenage type genre?
Well, that's one area that I tend to focus on. It's just a genre that I absolutely love. It's something that we all go through, you know. And aside from that, there is science fiction. There's a few other things, but I mean, I love teen comedies. It's just that transformation into adulthood that, again, everybody has to go through, and we can all relate to it.
And it is a big market of moviegoers, honestly. I mean, I have one of those in my family, my daughter. So, and she's always dabbling and making her own little films at home too. So, and I think now with YouTube, it's captured the imagination of more and more young people, and so connecting with that, it makes a lot of sense that you would choose to go after that genre, not just for your own work, but for the book that you wrote. And I know Riley, he looked at your book quite carefully, and I think you have some questions for Joe.
Well, I guess one of my first questions would be, did you write this before or after you started making your own teen comedy? And if it was before, did it influence you a lot by kind of going back and researching some of those, like the John Hughes films, kind of the prototypical teen comedies, really?
I wrote it after I wrote the two teen comedy screenplays, and I actually did adjust a little bit, to be honest, because one thing I found was at the end of the book, the last chapter, I went out and I interviewed teenagers and found out what they really look for in teen comedies. So based off of that, I adjusted my screenplay just a little bit to kind of take that in consideration, because they are the audience. They are who I'm making this movie for.
And did you find that most of them gravitated towards what you already thought people liked in teen comedy movies, or was there like a big variety of opinions? Because I think it was the last chapter had a whole bunch of interviews with all these different people with all kinds of different views on what a teen comedy should be, and a lot of them actually fit some of your observations and stuff from the beginning chapters.
If someone is making a suggestion to what they like, it could be because they've just seen one thing too many times, and they want a teen comedy that's a fantasy or a science fiction, but then you start to lose your base audience at the same time. And one of the best things to do is to gauge yourself, to look inside yourself at the story that you've originated, and you started on that path with that story for some reason, and I would say stick with it, write it out, and then have other people read it. And if it connects with them, then it doesn't matter what other people say.
But would you say a lot of the research you did, is it still viable? Like all these talk of teen cliques and group dynamics and stuff, is that all still stuff that people find relevant, you find, in teen comedies, or has it kind of evolved over the past couple of years?
I think human beings are human beings. Let's say even though we introduce technology into our lives, we still need to spend time with each other, you know. And in terms of cliques, at a base human level, what I've found is that people need to be surrounded by people that they care about, but sometimes a clique can be something that's negative. So even though they're grouped together and they have shared interest, if one person decides like they want to bully another person or a group, then it can influence that clique, that group, and it's like a hive mind, you know, and they all start bullying some other people. Or if another person that decides, oh, let's help out with charities, this and that, and it can influence that clique to go and do other things. So it's like a mini family of friends, and that's really what a clique is, and I don't think that's ever going to go away in terms of humanity.
Joe, can you give us an example from one of your screenplays of some of the dramas of teenage comedy that you brought in that you think really maybe expresses some of what you were just saying?
Sure. Well, what I found out was that in comedies like Mean Girls and like Clueless, there tends to be cliques that clash together. You know, so You have one side, the popular girls or like the nerdy girls, and they'll clash, and that's a common thing. What I wanted to do, instead of have that bullying back and forth, was create a character that had a lot of guilt inside of her for something that, when she was popular, that really traumatized her and she could not get over. And this screenplay I'm talking about is called Miss Popularity. And she actually creates a website. Her name is Alex. She creates a website called WeHateAlex.com. And it's anonymous. So what she does is she posts like she's other girls, having contests, making jokes about her. And so it was like Monday is like throw food on her day, and then Tuesday is trash day, Wednesday is water day. And she gets the entire school to bully her. And the main character has to actually uncover that and pull that and kind of resolve that issue from her. So it's a different take than the cliques going against each other.
That's almost disturbing. Is that what you were going for, to somehow get inside the psyche of a young girl and that challenge that they go through?
It's not really that disturbing, to be honest. It's not, maybe the way I describe it, it sounds that way.
Maybe it's because I'm a girl and I remember going through all that stuff.
Because if you look at Mean Girls, there are things where, you know, they're doing a lot of things, and like, you know, calling another girl as lesbian and having her eat protein bars to make her gain weight and all sorts of things like that, you know. So what I like to have is I always like to have a certain message in my movies as well, but not be so heavy hitting about it, you know. And kids today are actually exposed to far more than teen comedies from 10 to 20 years ago. You know, I talked to some of these kids who I interviewed in my book, and most of them had watched the rated R teen comedies, you know, and they were 12, they were 13, you know. So if you have something that's, you know, a PG-13 film and you're doing it in terms of Disney, they're automatically just going to be turned off by it. You need to have something that's a little bit real for them and that they've experienced with their friends, but of course not take it to such an extreme. Like, there's no drug use in any of my projects, you know, or even alcohol, to be honest. So
you're trying to be more real with just the dynamics, that they're real life and engaging things, but that you're doing it in a funny way. Is there a scene that you can tell us about that you're particularly proud of that you think encapsulates that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a clip that you guys can play.
Okay.
And it's really the moment where Sunny, who's the main character, has brought her best friend Alex over to find out how to become popular. And even though Sunny's older sister is the most popular girl in school, she thinks it's going to hurt her reputation, so she doesn't want them to know that they're sisters. So she has to ask the only person, which is her best friend Alex, to come up with a plan. And Alex comes up with 4 things, which is friends, activities, parties, and can't remember the 4th one. But yeah, it's in the scene. So if that's something you want to play, then
you can do that. So how have you been finding that you need to try to pull this together in a way that you can get investors interested in these ideas and show that teenagers are going to be interested in watching your films? Because you're saying it's got to come back to, you know, creating entertainment that's engaging and that's going to make people want to go out and see your film, such that somebody should invest in you. How do you pull all of that together?
You do whatever it takes, you know, and you find the people to mentor you, to guide you to that path. You know, it's kind of like if you're lost in the woods, you know, and you want to go somewhere, you have no idea where to go, and then you find help from someone who knows how to, you know, read the sun, you know, with a compass, and, you know, exactly what trails to go onto, you know. So it's that mentor that just guides you through the right path, so you don't go off the cliff. So
yeah.
or waste a lot of time.
You've already had some success, so it'd be interesting to hear about some of the films you have made. I understand that you won some film festivals, and Raleigh, I think you had a question about one of his award-winning films.
Yeah, you seem to have won Best Director for your work on Project Triumph at the American International Film Festival. What goes into directing a documentary like that? Like, what are the shooting schedules and stuff like for a documentary as opposed to a regular film? Because it's not so much set-based, right?
Correct. What happened with that was the charity was already in place for about 6 months. So when I was introduced, they needed a videographer, and I really volunteered my time. And there were about 15 kids that came from Haifa, Israel. Um, they were Jewish and Arab, and their whole issue was to see themselves, each other, as human beings rather than their culture. So in that sense, I was just thrown into the mix a few days before, and I followed them for 2 weeks straight. And I just filmed anything and everything. So I was coming up with the plan of how to make it all work as I was going along. And documentaries tend to be like that depending on the situation. If you're being inserted into an organization that wants that project. But if you have something in mind for your own documentary, then it's different. Then you can plan it out in advance as much as possible. So I hope that answers your question.
So when you're doing these documentary type things, is it more of a day in the life thing, or do you kind of ask them to talk about certain things and go through it with it, or is it more of a just kind of day by day shooting and editing down 2 weeks of footage into a documentary type shot?
Because it depends on what you want to convey to the audience. Whether it's a social cause, so in that case, social causes, you tend to want to finish the documentary as quickly as possible because it's current. You know, I also have a documentary that's called 90 Years of Happiness, and that's much different. That's something where I have to go interview 90 people from ages 1 to 90 to find out what makes them happy, and everyone gets about a minute to share what it is that that brings them happiness. So that's a much longer project, and that can apply to any time it's not a current social issue.
So, Joe, what do you think that movie that you made that won the award, what do you think got its recognition? What about it do you feel really proud of that the people giving the award were recognizing in your work?
Well, for that one, I think it was just the artistry and the telling of a complete story, and using everything that my teachers taught us and applying it. So, and it was just a culmination of everything. I think that's what made the school proud enough to give us the award, that we actually listened to them, we applied everything, and same thing with mentoring and coaching. If you don't apply it, it all goes to waste. So that I think that's what made it stand out.
And are you finding the fact that you won that award, are you finding that it's helping to build you and move you up that success ladder within filmmaking?
I think it has on a personal and professional level, because it validates you, and it says, okay, this is something that is of quality, and people can enjoy it, and it's affected people on an emotional level. On a professional level, that it was something that I could go out and when I would talk to clients for projects, I would say, oh, I won a film award. And they'd say, oh, wow. So it's another piece to say that, hey, you can trust me with your work.
So what are your goals now? I hear that you're working on a particular screenplay and you're wanting to move that along. Where do you see your career ultimately going? And do you have a fairly good strategy of how you're going to get there at this point?
I think I do, because of the the people that I'm partnering with and getting mentorship with, that all helps. You cannot do this alone. I mean, anyone who says that, I love to meet with them, to be honest. So, because aside from the producers that are coaching me, I even partnered with an actress. Her name is Sophia Linkletter. She is the granddaughter of legendary TV host Art Linkletter. So she's the lead of Miss Popularity, and so she has a lot of connections, her and her mother, in the entertainment industry, and they've introduced me to a lot of people to get this project off the ground. One of them was the producer. So again, you can't do this alone. You have to go seek out the coaches. You have to seek out partnerships, mentorships, and whatever it takes. And if they're not the right ones, then you move on and you find one that is right for you. So
it sounds like it takes a lot of passion and belief in yourself. How do you keep your passion burning to keep on going ahead and having that confidence to do that kind of networking where you got Linkletter on your roster? Those kinds of names, they do help, especially in LA and in the film industry, don't they?
yeah, I mean, what keeps me going is the fact that I remind myself that it's not about me. There's a small percentage. The reason why I do filmmaking originally was because it was about me, because of the way I felt when I watched the movie. But when I became a filmmaker, I discovered that it wasn't about me. It's about the audience. So 5% of what I do is for me as a filmmaker. The 95 is for the audience. Now, if you keep that in mind, then you're constantly adjusting to please them. And that's my driving force.
So, so Riley, I'm wondering, to kind of close this thing up, as a young, aspiring writer and filmmaker, what would you love to ask Joe to maybe leave you and other students considering going into this field? What would you want to ask him? Advice or something.
I guess my main question would be, where should you start, like after school, when you're looking out for your first job? Like, what kind of things should you do to get started and get into that industry?
I think it goes back to what you want. What is the career that you want to have? So there's a variety of things that you can do. If it's just you just want to get a job, I'd recommend not sending out resumes. I don't recommend that. What you do is just go find a directory where there's production companies, and you just start making phone calls. You just write a little script that you can read off for about a minute, and share your passion, and research their company, and say why you're a good fit and you'd love to come in for an interview. And that's if you want to just go in and start working in like a low entry-level position. Now, if you want the higher positions of above the line, producer, director, or screenwriter, then I recommend, again, you pick up the phone and you call people who are doing exactly what you want to do. So they're going to be your coaches, and just ask them to go to lunch or to meet for coffee, and to share their wisdom, because they're going to have 20, 30, 40 years of experience, and they're more than happy to do it. You may find some people that do not want to do that, but don't worry about them. You keep looking, because again, that's what coaching and that's what mentoring is, because they're going to share with you, here's the path to do it. Then all you do is you just follow that path.
Is there somebody, Joe, that's really special to you that you'd want to share with the listeners of that really inspired you and helped you really get started?
One person that really inspired me was one of my teachers, actually. And I mean, I had more classes with her than any other teacher, and she was really tough, but in a good way. And she taught me everything of how to build a story and really just flesh it out and make it emotionally engaging. And I've actually made a promise to myself that if I won an Oscar one day, which is not something that like I care less about than impacting an audience. If I were to win that, that Oscar is going to her. I'm sending it directly to her. So, yeah. So I think with the teachers, the coaches, they are the reason why you're going to be successful, Riley. So pay homage to them. You know, that's where I come from.
So what's her name?
Her
If you want to pay homage.
Her name is Sharon Murphy. She teaches editing at the Academy of Art University, and she is still there to this day. She's been there for maybe 10 years.
Great. Yeah, and you know, it's one of the things I love to do, and the reason why I teach and coach students is I'm passionate about helping young people pursue their creative goals and have just giving them the insight into how to really show the professors or people that they're going out after graduation how to show their attributes and what their talents are, and to gain that belief from others in themselves. But mostly at this stage, a lot of what I'm doing is building up students' confidence within themselves. First, by building their competency of having the basic skills and helping encourage them to bring out their creative ideas. Because ultimately, I think that that's what's really important is that you've got that original ideas that are fresh but meaningful to society. And it's great to hear that you're out there doing that and that you understand that your audience is really the most important thing. And it sounds like you got your ego in good check. So I wish you a lot of success, Joe. And I really thank you for taking time to share what you've learned so far in your education and in your early career, because I think that's the early stages that really matter when somebody's considering, do I want to go into this area for their education and their career? And parents, of course, want to know, can I expect that my son or daughter is going to succeed, and how would they get started? It's lovely to see people out in Hollywood and big-name directors and producers, but how do you get from here to there? So it's really been useful to hear from you where you're in that transition right now. And we'd love to follow up with you and hear how it's going. Is there anything in closing that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
You can't do this alone. You have to find people to help you, support you, to work with you, to partner, to get your coaches, get your mentors, and then make it happen. They will light the way for you to walk. Or without it, you're going to be in a shroud of darkness. You have blinders on, essentially. So.
Well, thank you, Joe. And Riley, how about you have a few parting words for our guest today?
Well, thanks a lot. It was great meeting you. Great to hear all this stuff for me, since I'm looking into universities and colleges right now. This has been really helpful, so thanks a lot.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. And Riley, one last thing I'd have to say is I would drop the word aspiring from aspiring filmmaker. You just be a filmmaker. Right? Whether you're working on small projects or not, whether you're by yourself filming something with actors, that's a filmmaker. No matter what, that's a filmmaker. You're no longer aspiring. You just be a filmmaker. So I hope you can just drop that word from now on and embrace that. Okay?
Yeah.
All right?
Good advice, and I'll drop that from my vocabulary as well. And Riley is a very talented young man. I'm really impressed by this fellow and what he can do. So I think you might see him out there, maybe working on a project together one day or competing. Who knows? But I think you're both inspiring young gentlemen, and I really appreciate both of your time on this interview. And Joe, maybe you can tell us where other young students can follow your work, or other people wanting to partner or invest with you. Tell us a bit about your website or other productions that you're involved with.
Well, if anyone wants to see my work, my website is shininglightpictures.com. If they want to see the teen comedy, Miss Popularity, that's misspopularitymovie.com. Or they can follow us on Facebook. to support the film, which is Miss Popularity Movie when you search it in Facebook. And yeah, I would also just extend to Riley, if he ever has any other questions about filmmaking, feel free to reach out to me. More than happy just to provide any other insights and input. So, you know.
That'd be really cool. Thanks.
Thanks. And so, if you want to get the book, Teenage Dreams, it'll be good to find out where we can get that. And if any students want some help in deciding what college to go to or what processes to go to, you can go to PortPrep.com, and there's a free assessment there where if you need to even just discuss what to do, let alone what do you put in your portfolio to get in, you can take advantage of that free assessment. Go to portprep.com/assessment. And so where do they get your book?
You can find my book on Amazon, but if you're in Canada, I'm not so sure if you're able to purchase it because I'm in the U.S. So.
Well, you can go to Amazon.com or you can go to Amazon.ca. So from Canada, you can get either, no problem. And you know what? I'll put it on my Amazon store at portprep.com/WP, and just go to the store, and we'll have it up there too. Okay? We'll see what we can do to get Amazon to have it on our store. Great. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye now.